Blueprints of the Broken, Episode 4, The Experimenters. The laboratories were only the beginning. Experimenters moved beyond glass and steel, beyond notes and charts, into the minds of entire populations. Their work was precise, measured, and systematic. Observation became the first instrument of control. They catalogued behavior, emotion, and obedience as if humanity itself were a specimen. Every reaction was data, every choice a variable, every belief a formula waiting to be tested. Institutions cloaked their methods in the authority of science. Schools became testing grounds for conformity. Textbooks shaped perception, curricula taught compliance as intelligence. The same lessons once applied to individuals were scaled to classrooms, neighborhoods, entire regions. Methods of isolation, repetition, reward, and punishment were refined into invisible loops that guided thought before it could even form. What began as study quietly became a strategy. At the same time, media became their amplifier. Newspapers, radio, and film were no longer tools of information, but instruments of conditioning. Narratives were constructed to align emotion to the objectives of power. Fear, hope, pride, and loyalty were measured, targeted, and reinforced. The experimenters observed which combinations of stimuli produced obedience, which incited resistance, and which could be neutralized with a single broadcast or article. Propaganda evolved into precision psychology. Psychology provided the map, but culture became the canvas. Entire peoples were analyzed as patterns, their histories studied for weaknesses, their traditions catalogued and suppressed. Indigenous languages, African spiritual practices, and other marginalized knowledge systems were deemed errors to be corrected. The experimenters did not merely seek compliance, they sought the erasure of alternative memories. History itself was reconstructed to serve authority, turning cultures into a controlled narrative. The work was meticulous, almost clinical. Reports described behaviors in cold, detached language. Individuals were reduced to case studies, communities to data sets, and yet, for all the precision, the human cost was immense. Pain, confusion, and loss echoed through generations. What could be measured, obedience, conformity, came at the expense of identity, memory, and autonomy. These were not side effects, but the intended outcomes of a system built to perfect control. War and policy became testing grounds. Conflicts were manipulated to accelerate assimilation, reinforce narratives, and break resistance. Borders, schools, and social programs were aligned with the experimenters' models. No detail was too small. Rituals altered, languages suppressed, beliefs reshaped. Each intervention created a feedback loop. Results were catalogued and replicated elsewhere. What worked in one nation could be exported to another, scaled globally with unsettling precision. Human stories were quieter but persistent. Individuals remembered the erasure, even when history tried to convince them otherwise. Families whispered forbidden knowledge. Songs and ceremonies survived in shadows. Memory became a form of resistance. Even as the experimenters refined their methods, those who remembered proved the mind could never be fully subdued. Awareness flickered in corners, in quiet acts of defiance, in the fragments of cultures that refused extinction. By mid-century, the architecture of influence was complete. The experimenters had transformed understanding into obedience, culture into data, and belief into replicable patterns. Their instruments were subtle but total. They no longer needed to punish openly. Compliance had been internalized. The same principles that had begun in laboratories now governed entire populations, guiding emotion, shaping thought, and directing collective memory. The experiment had succeeded, invisibly. And yet the experimenters underestimated one force, the human spirit. Even in the face of precise conditioning, fragments of the old world endured, knowledge carried in whispers, memories preserved in ritual, resilience coded in culture. These remnants were evidence that no system of observation, no matter how exacting, could fully claim the mind. The legacy of the experimenters is undeniable, but it is not absolute. Awareness persists, waiting for recognition. The story of the experimenters is not merely history. It is a blueprint, a record of how humanity can be measured, guided, and rewritten, and a reminder that vigilance, memory, and consciousness remain the only defenses against systems designed to shape belief from birth to eternity.